All right, so picture this, a giant oil tanker right in the middle of the ocean, and it starts changing direction. That's basically what's happening with India's oil imports.
Yeah, it's a pretty apt analogy.
And for anyone out there aiming for those top ranks in the UPSC Mains exams, this is something you really need to know.
Oh, absolutely. This is like major economic and geopolitical stuff right at the heart of things.
Exactly. So before the whole Ukraine war thing, things were actually pretty straightforward.
Yeah, you could pretty much draw a straight line between India and its oil suppliers.
Right. It was mainly Iraq and Saudi Arabia. Those are our big oil buddies.
The main players, for sure.
But then everything changed.
Oh, yeah, the whole landscape shifted. You had sanctions on Russia. Suddenly they have all this oil they need to sell.
Yeah, and what happened?
Indian refiners, they're always on the lookout for a good deal, and they saw their chance.
To buy up that Russian oil at a discount.
Exactly. It was a smart move, honestly. Helped India deal with those crazy energy price spikes we saw last year.
Makes sense. So Russia steps in, becomes a major supplier. But wait, there's a plot twist, right?
Oh, there's always a twist. It's like a geopolitical thriller. So Russia's own demand for oil shot up. Suddenly, they've got less to export.
Uh-oh, and that affects us, right?
Directly. India's imports from Russia, just in December alone, they dropped by 17%. That's massive.
Wow, 17%. Okay, so less oil coming from Russia. Who fills the gap?
Well, this is where West Asia really enters the scene.
Okay, tell me more.
Iraq, especially. They really stepped up their game, boosted exports to India by a whopping 29%.
29%. That's serious.
They've become a major player in India's energy mix.
Wow. What are the others, like the UAE?
They had a pretty awesome month, too. Oil exports to India hit a 32-month high. Haven't seen numbers like that since, like, way back in 2022.
So it's not just about who has the oil. It's about who's offering the best deal.
You got it. We're talking tiny price differences. Like Russian Urals crude was going for $5.50 cheaper per barrel than Saudi Arabia's Arab Light.
That doesn't sound like much, 5.50.
No, but you got to think about the scale. India imports over 85% of its crude oil.
Yeah, right. Millions and millions of barrels.
Exactly. Those little price differences add up to huge savings, which are, let me tell you, super important for a country like India.
Huge energy needs, the economy's growing, every penny counts.
Absolutely.
So here's what I'm getting. Russia's exports down, West Asia's up, and India's basically playing the field, looking for the best deals. This is like high-stakes energy poker.
It really is. And, you know, it's a constantly shifting landscape. It's not like things are settled now. This is just a snapshot.
And this is exactly why we do these deep dives. We're not just throwing facts at you. We're trying to understand the why, the how, the consequences.
Exactly. The UPSC examiners, they're not looking for parrots. They want people who can think critically about these issues.
All right, so we've set the scene. We've got the players. We've got the stakes.
The game is on.
When we come back, we're going to really unpack what this whole oil situation means for India on the world stage.
Buckle up, folks, because it's about to get even more interesting.
Welcome back, everyone. So before the break, we were looking at how India's oil imports are changing. Remember that analogy of the tanker changing course?
Yeah, the giant oil tanker.
Right. Well, now let's dive into what these changes actually mean for India's role in the world.
Okay, because this is a big deal, right? Especially for the UPSC mains exam. This kind of global stuff is crucial.
Absolutely. It's a key part of understanding India's place on the world stage.
One thing that really strikes me is this whole balancing act India has to pull off.
Oh, yeah. It's like a constant juggling act.
They need oil. It has to be affordable. But then they've also got these relationships with countries like Russia, Saudi Arabia.
Right. And those relationships haven't always been the smoothest.
Exactly. How do they handle that pressure?
Well, it's a bit like walking a tightrope, honestly.
I can imagine.
Remember, India has this long-standing policy of non-alignment.
Right. They try not to pick sides in global disputes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the current situation is really putting that approach to the test. It's a real dilemma, isn't it? On one hand, you've got India benefiting from cheaper Russian oil.
Which, let's face it, doesn't look great to the West, especially with what's going on in Ukraine.
Right, exactly. But then on the other hand, they're also strengthening ties with places like Iraq, the UAE.
Key allies of the West. It's complicated.
It's super complicated.
What India is doing is diversifying very deliberately. They're making sure they don't become too reliant on any one country for their oil.
So spreading the risk, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It gives them flexibility, a bit of independence in how they deal with other countries.
And we can't forget India is the world's third largest consumer of crude oil.
Oh, they're a major player in the energy market, no doubt about it.
They import over 85% of what they need. That kind of buying power, that gives them serious leverage, doesn't it?
Imagine you're at a giant market, right? Everyone wants to sell you their stuff. You're the customer. Everyone wants to keep happy.
That's India right now.
Exactly. They're in a prime position to negotiate good deals, maybe even use their energy needs to get other things they want, economically or strategically.
It's like energy is a bargaining chip in this global game.
Exactly. It's not just about keeping the lights on. It's about using those energy needs to boost India's position in the world.
Okay, so where do we go from here? What's next? Does India eventually move away from Russia completely if things in Ukraine keep going the way they are? Or can they keep this balancing act up forever?
$1 million question, right? Hard to say for sure. But one thing is clear, India seems pretty determined to do things their own way.
They're forging their own path.
They're going to keep this multi-pronged approach, working with different partners, adjusting their strategy as needed. They're not afraid to make tough calls, even if it ruffles some feathers internationally.
This is why international relations are so fascinating. It's like a giant game of chess. Every move has consequences.
Oh, absolutely. And India is playing the game pretty well, I'd say.
They're definitely holding their own. So we've talked about how those seemingly small price differences, a few dollars here and there, can make a huge impact for India because they import so much oil. But what are the bigger, broader economic effects of all this? I mean, with this whole oil landscape shifting like this.
That's a great question. It brings us right to the heart of energy security. For a country like India, a developing economy growing so fast, affordable energy is crucial.
That's the engine, right? Driving everything.
It's the foundation. Powers industry, transport, agriculture, pretty much everything.
So if energy prices go crazy, that affects the whole system.
The whole thing starts to wobble. Higher energy costs lead to inflation. People can't buy as much. Economic growth slows down.
And for a developing country, that's a big problem.
Huge problem. So finding ways to keep prices stable, to make sure those energy supplies are reliable, that's a top priority for India.
I bet it is.
Yeah.
So that's where their whole diversification strategy comes in again, right?
Yeah. Exactly. By spreading the risk, by having multiple suppliers, they're less vulnerable to sudden price hikes or, if one supplier has a problem and can't deliver.
So it's not just about playing the global game. It's about protecting themselves, their own economy.
Precisely. It's all connected.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground here. Let's take a quick pause, and then when we come back, we'll wrap up this deep dive with some final thoughts. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We're in the final stretch now, wrapping up our exploration of India's changing oil imports.
It has been quite a journey, hasn't it? We've been following this story, this tanker changing direction, from Russia scaling back to West Asia stepping up, and all while India is trying to juggle, affordable energy with these complicated relationships on the world stage.
Exactly. So much to consider. But before we finish up completely, I think we need to zoom out a little, look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, good idea. Get a broader perspective.
So what does all this mean for India's energy security in the long run? Like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line? What do you think?
Well, as we've been discussing, India relying on other countries for oil, that's not going away anytime soon.
Right. That's a reality we have to face.
So minimizing the risks that come with that, that's super important.
And diversification is key, right? We keep coming back to that, not depending on just one supplier.
Exactly. Whether it's Russia, Saudi Arabia, whoever. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Spread the risk.
Right. And it's not just about who they're buying from, it's about what they're buying. India has been investing a lot in renewable energy.
Oh, yeah. Solar, wind, all that.
Yep. It's a long-term strategy to become less reliant on fossil fuels altogether.
So even while we're talking about these shifts in the oil market, there's this whole other energy transition happening in the background.
It's like a slow-motion revolution happening alongside the fast-paced drama of global oil prices and politics.
Exactly. Two stories happening at the same time.
But here's the thing. Even with the shift towards renewables, oil and gas are still going to be big players in India's energy mix for a while yet.
So we can't ignore it.
No, absolutely not. Understanding these global oil dynamics and how India is navigating them, that's essential for anyone who wants to grasp India's future economically and geopolitically.
So for all those UPSC aspirants out there, this is something to keep studying.
Definitely. Those energy trends, they're going to keep popping up. in the prelims, in essays, even in the interviews if you get that far.
Absolutely. It's a hot topic.
And this deep dive has really highlighted something important. Even those small changes in the global oil market, they can have huge effects.
Right, like ripples spreading out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Affecting economies, changing relationships between countries. It's a reminder that we're all interconnected. And energy is one of those fundamental things that ties us all together.
Okay, so let's wrap up with a final takeaway. If we had to condense this entire deep dive into one sentence, what would it be?
I'd say India is demonstrating incredible agility and strategic thinking in its quest for energy security, skillfully navigating a really complex global oil landscape.
Well put. And for our listeners, here's something to think about. As India's economy keeps growing and they need more and more energy, what new partnerships and strategies might emerge in the future? It's something to ponder. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And of course, before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like. It really helps other UPSC aspirants find the show. Until next time, happy studying.